Car coach Lauren Fix sent you. Lauren, thank you for joining us on the program today. Little tech issues, but we're going to buff those out. Why is it that the UAW strike should be the biggest story in the world? No one's talking about it, and it seems like today's the day that everyone goes on strike. What does this mean? The first time in their history, all three major automobile makers have their workers go on strike. Why has it never happened where all three have done it at the same time?
Well, because typically they target one brand. They'll target Ford or GM or Stellantis, which is Chrysler, Dodge, Ram, Jeep, etc. But this is an interesting situation. See, the new president of the UAW, Shawn Fain, saw that, hey, Southwest got a huge 40% increase for their pilots, and of course UPS did as well. So now they're thinking, we deserve that too. I'm not saying they don't deserve it. I'm just saying that why it's easy to say, well, the CEO of the company makes a ton of money. We should have a piece of that pie. We are not a socialist economy. The person that takes the most risk, which is the CEO, which has to make their stockholders and shareholders happy, is the one that takes the risk, who's doing more than just sitting at their desk signing papers. They actually have to create product. They have to work with the government. They have to make all these rules and regulations and make sure that everything going down the pipeline gets done. But what happens when all three go on strike, this is what the president's not saying, this is what nobody's saying, is the UAW strike could drive up inflation, push Michigan into a recession, and even hurt Biden in a re-election campaign. Because while he said, all these people, oh, we're behind you. The union is with you. We're going to work. That's great. That's awesome. And I'd love to have a 40% raise myself. But there's also a point when you start looking at these numbers saying this is unreasonable. The Ford, GM, and Chrysler came back with a 20% increase, which, again, is extremely generous. The UAW reduced their demand down to 36%. They're still quite a distance away. But they want to be able, and I know this will never happen, you're never going to see the health care benefits put back in for the retirees because that will put them into bankruptcy. You're also never going to see them getting paid for 40 hours and only work 4 days a week, which is what they're asking for. Any CEO that signs onto that is going to get fired. They're going to get released from their job. They want wage growth over 4 years, and all workers want to get paid equally. I'm not disagreeing with some of these things, but they want ratification bonuses. They want the profit sharing. They want more vacation, all kinds of protections. And all this sounds great, but you can't give all this away when the companies aren't making, they say, record profits. They're not making record profits yet. We're still pulling out of the chip shortage. And worse, for every electric car that's made, it's 40% less people to build it because there's less moving parts. So if you want to push this EV agenda, you're going to lose 40% of the UAW.
You know, I'm telling you, there is no one in the United States. I listened to this coverage on the weekend. I listened to it during the week. Everyone was talking about the UAW strike. The only person making that point has been Lauren Fix. That the UAW, and again, I think it's important to say that the UAW is asking for less than other unions have asked for and received, but that doesn't mean it's not going to come at a consequence. Look, you get that medical, plan for the retirees, and you start getting different pensions and cost of living adjustments and a 46% pay increase, paid for 32 hours. Paid for 40 while you're working 32. There's going to be a lot less people in the UAW come next negotiation, and they're going to be in Mexico.
Well, I'll tell you what they're going to do, because there's Unifor, which is in Canada, and they haven't come to an agreement either. That's sort of the UAW of Canada. You're going to have the Teamsters line themselves up with the UAW as well. So even if your car does get built, it probably won't get delivered. We're already experiencing that already. Car dealers are going to pick up cars right from the factory. Like, this is not 1980. And so we're back to doing this. What's going to end up happening is, just like you're seeing with like the new Lincoln Aviator, they're building it in China. It's going to come here and they're going to sell it. You want it built in another country? Want it built in Taiwan, India, pick a country. They're going to build elsewhere. They're going to take those jobs away from the Northeast, where all the union states are. You're going to see lots more building down in the southern end of the state. Look at Volkswagen, Kia, Hyundai, Mercedes. They're all building in the southern states where there's no unions. And so they don't have to deal with this. And they could potentially pick up the sales that the big three would lose. Now, that may be good or bad depending upon if you own a dealership or whatnot, but I will tell you, this is not good for Detroit. This is not good for our economy. And although I know it's great to have more higher wages, what's really going to happen? Okay, we agree to 30%, which is a huge, everybody who's listening would love to have a 30% increase in pay. Okay, so you get your 30% increase in pay. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to raise the price of a car. So it's not going to impact the people they think it's going to impact. Because when Shawn Fain's like, oh, all the CEOs are making all this money, it doesn't impact them. It impacts you when you go to the dealer and go, wow, the average price of a car is $49,000, and now it's $52,000 or $55,000. Everything gets more expensive because it's just rising tides. You get paid more, things cost more. Electricity costs more, food costs more, utilities of all types cost more, everything costs more. And yes, I understand that because I haven't had a raise since God knows when. But I will tell you, if they get this raise, everything gets more expensive, and it's going to make it harder to get parts. Service is going to get more expensive. Everything to the dealers gets more expensive because they're going to try and make up for that loss, and it's huge.
So explain this to me, though. If everything, that flash to bang approach of, you talked about the chip shortage and the supply chain issues, and the flash to bang, if we started over tomorrow, how long it would take. We're trying to do that now, 2 to 3 years down the road. But with this auto worker strike, if everyone walks out, and let's say it becomes like the writers in the Hollywood strike situation, if we go 90 days, 60 days, what does that do to the actual output in 6 months, 10 months? How much time do we lose in 60 days?
Well, to give you an idea, once they striked at midnight last night, I was up because I was following the feed from the UAW and from other car manufacturers, and I have all their offers and everything. But a 10-day strike could cost the economy $5 billion. That's it, 10 days. That's a lot. So the UAW is still, negotiating. But then they said last night at midnight, we're done negotiating. We're not negotiating again until Saturday. So, of course, all the car manufacturers made a secondary offer. They're trying to work it out. But this targeted strike is very interesting. They're targeting mid-sized trucks, which would be like the Ranger, the Colorado, and also an engine plant or a Jeep plant. So when you're looking at, they're hitting plants that they didn't know until, well, they knew, the UAW knew, but the manufacturers didn't know until late last night which of the 3 plants are being targeted. They could easily shift that target or expand that target. Oh, we don't like your last counteroffer of 20%, so we're going to hit another 3. And what car manufacturers are doing is they're either hiring non-union people, they're getting their managers and white-collar workers to work down on the production line. Some workers are still working, so not everybody's on strike. But the product that comes out the door, they could say, great, we don't have engines. So it's like having a sandwich with no meat. And that would be a problem, or no bread with a bunch of meat. So when you have that and you're missing components because of the just-in-time or there's other types of services they have, so everything shows up just as they need it, they're not going to be able to build very many vehicles. And if you've got a vehicle on order, and I know a lot of people do, or the dealer's waiting for more product to come to the dealership, this hurts the dealers. This hurts the consumers who won't buy it or will buy another brand, and it hurts the car manufacturers. Because once you leave and you go, I'm going to go buy a Honda Civic, or I'm going to go buy a Toyota Camry, you're not coming back.
Right. So how much of this do you blame to this idea of what Farley said at Ford? You're just shoving these cars down people's throats. We're not making the money you think we're making because we're forced to sell cars nobody wants.
Exactly. No, Jim Farley's right. I'm thrilled that he finally agreed with what I've been saying for the last 10 years. And I've taken a lot of heat, not just from car manufacturers, but also other journalists and people saying, oh, you don't like electric cars. No, I didn't say that. I said, I'm not saying it's the only answer. There has to be a mix. And so what Jim Farley said at the Detroit Auto Show Media Days on Tuesday was that we're offering an option. You can buy a Lightning truck if you want one. You can buy a hybrid, you can buy a plug-in hybrid, you can buy gas, or you can buy diesel. All are going to be available. Same plan, interestingly, that Honda and Toyota have, who took a lot of heat for that as well, because consumers all have different needs. Not one thing fits for everyone. And when they're forcing these electric cars to car manufacturers to say, you must sell this and that's your only option, if you don't, there is billions of dollars in fines. They're like, okay, we're gonna build it or go out of business, so we're gonna build it. But then you turn around and you realize the other direction, they're taking millions of dollars in losses on every car. And you can offset that with Mustangs and F-150 trucks that are gasoline powered, or Ram trucks or Chevy Corvettes or whatever it might be. But you have to realize that you can't make up a loss in volume because that loss just continues. They're producing cars that people aren't buying. Go by any of the great dealerships we have in the Western New York area, and you'll instantly see, I won't list any brands, but I've gone through a lot of them, and their cars are sitting there, and I ask the salespeople, have any interest? They go, can't even sell them. Because we have winter. We lived through 3 heavy-duty storms where you lose your battery by at least a third, or you can't charge because you have no power. So it doesn't work for everyone. And that's fine if it works for you. I know you have a lot of listeners that love their electric vehicles. You should be able to buy them. You should be able to enjoy them, but you should never be forced to buy anything. It's like you can only eat McDonald's hamburgers, that's it. Or you can only eat crickets, which seems like the way they're trying to push us. So, I mean, when you put these kinds of demands on a car manufacturer, they can't survive. They cannot survive. And then you're asking for, a 10-day strike of 143,000 workers at a loss of $5.6 billion to the national gross domestic product. You can't recover that.
So what do you make? We just found the largest lithium deposits that people believe are global lithium deposits. Does that work the same way with oil? Like you find a bunch of oil and all of a sudden the global markets are like, there's oil over here. Maybe we should, lower our price to make this thing stretch out a little bit more. Does lithium work the same way?
Because it sounds good. That's common sense. That's in the government. There's no common sense. I will tell you that the price of oil and crude oil is up today. Lithium, if it's there, doesn't mean we can mine it. Where is it? Who does it affect? Is the federal government going to not offer a lease? Remember, we had leases in Alaska. They just canceled those leases. So President Biden said, we're not going to do those leases. We're going to cancel those. Well, OPEC says they're going to make less oil. We still have Russian oil coming in. And still, you're coming to the point where OPEC has said, and OPEC Plus, that we're going to jack up the prices until they're where we like them to be. So as long as we're beholden to other countries for any raw materials or for any oil supplies, we will never be independent. We'll never be energy independent. We were under the last president. But this president doesn't want us that way. He wants us to be on batteries. The problem is that although those lithium mines are there, the cost to mine that and the impact to the environment is substantially worse than anything coming out your tailpipe.
And so is that, we just look at that as being an apostate opinion? Like people are just like, oh, you're just being a contrarian? Like, why is that not something that everyone is saying? It's the truth. It's not like that's, you know what I'm saying? Like we're literally saying that it's so political that we're just going to lie to people. That's our politics, our position.
They don't call it lies. They just say that they have a different perspective.
Okay, so we know that we're not. So could it be possible that we find lithium and cobalt and copper and all these different things that we know we need, these rare earth minerals we know we need for our EV ambition, but we just want other countries to rip up their planet and their atmosphere environment over ours?
Well, it's everybody's atmosphere, right? So if
that's true.
They're mining cobalt in Africa, which is the worst for the environment as far as it kills people, it kills the plants around it. And these children are doing this. And the BBC went and actually there's tons of content online, real content of people that have gone to these cobalt mines, and people are dying. And it doesn't just affect the environment directly above that mine. It's the environment. It moves, right? The atmosphere moves. We see it in rain, and that's where you're getting acid rain. You're getting all kinds of stuff that is a problem because when you start digging up things that shouldn't be dug up for the health of the people, the animals, the plants, everything in this environment that they claim to be so concerned about, it affects the whole world. And that's exactly what they're doing in Afghanistan and other countries. China owns these mines. So we're no longer beholden to the Middle East. We're beholden to China, and they know it. And there is no way to get away from it because they own all the mines. And a lot of the funding of battery manufacturers that are here in the U.S. are partially funded by China, including that huge plant that's in Michigan. And people are pushing back. They don't like that. They don't want China to be owning everything here in the U.S.
That's fascinating to me. And not only that, you have to look at, China. It's dealing with our migration, too. We've got people escaping those cobalt mines because of the way they're treated. So it's actually creating a humanitarian crisis, not just an environmental crisis.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
so fascinating.
And I don't
Lauren
think
Fix,
anyone addresses that.
No, you are, and you have been, and we appreciate you. Lauren Fix, thank you so much for your time. As always, Bell Rings Automotive brings us Lauren Fix every single Friday at 11:30. Follow her on social media at laurenfix.com or at Lauren Fix. Go to laurenfix.com, Lauren Fix Car Coach. We have more of the program, 8030930. We come back after this brief message.